Hey guys, so before we start, I just want to say that I don't subscribe to victim culture, and my goal of this video is not try to pass blame for how my life has turned out. My goal in making this video is just to be open about a topic that many of us face but just stay silent on. So I'm going to bring it back to when I was younger, and you can see if my story is similar to yours, and if it perhaps is, and you feel like maybe you have ADHD, perhaps you can go and seek treatment, and then you can begin that healing process at a much earlier age than I did, and perhaps change your life. If this talk sparks a light bulb for even one of you today, then this video will have been worth it for me. So growing up, I was a complete spaz, and I thought I was just not cut out for just anything important. I believed something was just off or wrong with me. Like there was just something that I just could not pinpoint or fix. Like I was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle that made everything fit for everyone else except me. And it turns out there was this hidden force in me that I really just did not even discover until much later in life. That was ADHD. It was like invisible chaos that was pulling all the strings in my life, but I just didn't have a clue. And this wasn't like the, oh look, a squirrel type of distraction, but the real chaotic, why can't I get my life together kind. My life was like a race car with no brakes, just full gas zooming from one thing to the next. Like every single channel on your TV is on all at once at the same time on full blast. That was my everyday life. Homework was like going to battle without any armor. I'd sit down to go and try to get things done, and before I knew it, my mind was in a complete other direction, focusing on anything but the task that was in front of me. And I'm convinced if smartphones were around back then, I never would have graduated the 3rd grade probably. And I really wasn't trying to be a pain. It was just like I didn't have an off switch. And before I knew it, I was labeled as the class clown or the troublemaker. And those labels just started to become my identity. It was just who I was. It was just what I was embracing at that point. And I feel bad because my parents were always in and out of meetings, just always concerned that I was just doing something wrong. I was always gonna be in trouble for something. And teachers would start to question my potential, and it got me thinking if I even had any. And looking back, I'm not really sure why teachers didn't even ever consider the thought that maybe I had ADHD or anything like that. I don't know if it just wasn't as normalized as maybe it is today, but they just kind of patted me off as just, yeah, this troublemaker kid and not someone that might be having some learning disabilities. In high school, just wasn't that much different either. It just felt like everyone else around me was hitting these big life milestones, looking at colleges early, and I just was not. I was just stuck. I dreaded deadlines, and trying to do well on a test was like trying to read underwater. It was impossible to focus. Lectures and tests were just like a haze of words where my mind would go blank. I wouldn't be able to actually retain the information. It would just float away. I usually just relied on my trusty answer C and just prayed for another day. And really the only thing that kept me afloat was just extra credit and homework. And these became my secret weapon in order to scrape by, but not to actually do well and stand out. And counselors just straight up told me that I was not college material. Hearing those words, unlikely to succeed, I just felt like I was a stupid person, that I was dumb, not different. I lived in a very small mountain town where there was just so much pressure because everyone knew everyone, and I was so determined to go to a 4-year, so I managed to just leverage all those presentations and extra credit and do just enough to get into a 4-year university. So I picked one, and at 17, I left and I was off to college. I thought I'd be a fresh slate where I could reinvent myself. Maybe I would grow out of things, and being in a different environment, I would start to actually pick things up easier. But those same traits just followed me. College was obviously even more intense than high school, and I really just continued to rely on trying to do the extra credit and do the presentations and office hours and everything else because I continued to struggle with tests. That just stayed with me. That was always a challenge. And looking back, I'm just so proud of myself because I graduated with honors. And again, I did that because I was able to get grades by just maxing out the syllabus with everything else and then get just passing grades on tests. But then when school ended, that's when ADHD started to really mess with my life and really screw me up. Sitting in a cubicle all day, just pressing buttons just felt like my absolute worst nightmare. And I was getting fired left and right. Opportunities would just continue to slip away, and I was just feeling like more and more of a loser because everyone else around me was continuing to climb up the corporate ladder, start a family, buy a home, everything else, and I was just hardly surviving at that point. And this erratic, impulsive nature of mine just translated into every other aspect of my life. Late night online shopping sprees, booking trips on a whim with money I didn't have, and just stacking up debt like it was just part of my daily routine. And each one of those decisions was just like a quick fix where I was putting a band-aid over what was a much bigger problem that I didn't even realize I had. Those years were just supposed to be my foundation building time. those years that I was able to actually build a sustainable future for myself. But instead, it was like I was walking on quicksand. And this affected my relationships too, where I was just strained by this unpredictability that I had. And I would just look at the mirror just thinking, what is wrong with me? My life just started to go downhill so quickly. It was awful. I was turning to alcohol. I was going into debt. I was just becoming someone that I just did not want to be. And I got so absolutely depressed. And it took just an absolute rock bottom moment in my 30s where I was just desperate. And that's when I decided to actually seek help. I had heard of ADHD, but again, I was raised thinking that there was something wrong with me. So it was one of those things that I just went in thinking, I guess, let's see what happens. So I made an appointment with a psychiatrist and I went in for testing, and sure enough, I had ADHD. And I had these mixed emotions of just grief and anger and regret. I grieved for my younger self who just could not figure out why he was so much different than everyone else. And my teenage self who equated being different as being less. And for my adult self who had just zero self-control with his finances. I was angry for all the time wandering in the dark as people around me were just too quick to call me lazy or stupid. And I regretted all those might have been missed opportunity moments that I looked back and thought that if I had known then I would have done something different now. But it was also the start of just truly understanding who I really am. Just knowing that there was a reason for all the chaos, that I wasn't just a mess up, but my brain was actually wired differently, and I went about life not knowing that. If I had known that I had ADHD at a much earlier age, perhaps I could have sought treatment and I could have made better decisions in my 20s and up to this point today. And although I believe that this undiagnosed ADHD played a hand in how I made a lot of my decisions in life, again, it's my own doing and I have to live with it. But now in having this diagnosis, I could actually learn to manage it properly and begin to un-F my life, to actually build a life that I can have control over. And I really just refuse to let those past years define who I become now. And if you're out there with those same feelings of inadequacy and like your mind is running the show and you can't control it, just hear me out. You're not in this alone and you're definitely not broken. Battles you're facing or your past does not determine who you become now. Getting that diagnosis could be a pivotal point in your life where you start to steer it in the right direction. It's never too late to start. Like I said, I got this diagnosis when I was 30, and just in these past 2 years, I've made such massive leaps in my confidence, in my ability to focus. I'm able to start a YouTube channel and stay at it consistently and not burn out and give up quickly. I'm almost 18 months in at this point, and having this diagnosis has just allowed me to really truly understand who I am and leverage that in order to live the life that I actually want. Hope this video helped and resonated with someone, and if it did, please give that video a thumbs up so it reaches more of you. And if you're watching for the first time, please consider subscribing. I do a lot more content on ADHD and productivity, and I hope that you guys will tune in. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.